Hey folks, today I've got Dave Staude, who is a tattoo artist, and actually not only a tattoo artist, he's a very good artist all around, and somebody that I met quite a few years back when seeing some of his work and was really inspired by what he was doing. And so I'm going to chat to him a bit about his tattoo work and what you should think about before getting a tattoo and how he's coping with this current time. And yeah, just to get to hear from Dave and what he's up to. Welcome, Dave.
Cheers. Thanks, Val. Thanks
So
for having me.
it's a pleasure, man. And just to start off with, I think, yeah, just to give a little bit of background and just tell us how you managed to get into the tattooing.
Cool. Um, sure. Basically, I think it was to start off. It was pretty much my brother that was the catalyst. So he was the one that literally recommended me to actually doing artwork on people as opposed to canvas and doing drawings for other people with various commissioned artwork and that type of thing. At the time, I was a graphic designer working for an advertising agency. So I just thought, yeah, let me give it a go. But it took a while to get into it, obviously, because that was the first thought was initially it's way too much responsibility. But he said, well, it's just a different application and different medium. If you can learn the technicality behind it, you should be okay. And that was it. I haven't looked back, and it's been almost 5 years.
And just talking about, you've done quite a bit of design work for me and that and stuff that we've done together. Has the design side of things and being involved in design, I think you're involved in IT as well, and all that side influenced the way you work and your tattoo art?
Very, very much so. That is, I think, one of the most fundamental aspects and attributes with the industry that I'm now in. If it wasn't for the design and artistic background that I have, that I've studied and actually been through, I don't think I would have actually ever gone or delved into the tattooing at all. But it certainly helped a hell of a lot with this because I use it literally every single day and with every single consultation that I have, every single client. So it's back and forth using the Adobe suite. So it's either Photoshop or Illustrator. That's a daily ritual for me. That's what I work in. And then obviously back and forth at the actual drawing table. Yeah.
Help you having both those disciplines, because I would imagine a lot of guys who get into the tattoo artists, doing tattoos and that don't necessarily have that background. But actually, talking about that and thing is, how does one actually get into becoming a tattoo artist? I always thought, you can't really practice on people because that's there for life. How do get to be a tattoo?
To start with, obviously to start with, you can't remotely touch a human being. That all comes with a time, a lot of hard work practicing on what you call practice skins, which is essentially made up of a synthetic material, either made up of A4 or A5 size. But prior to that, I mean, it's learning all the little different aspects and attributes within the tattooing realm, knowing about the actual tools that you're going to be using, various the inks applications like computer applications, that because everything that obviously I'm currently working with, you would have to actually get to know and to know right through and through. So that includes from your bloodborne pathogen tests, your courses that you take yearly. It deals with waste management, the various tattoo machines that you end up wanting to use. You've got a variety that you have. But to get back to your question, how do you get into it, or was the question how do I get into it, or how does someone get into it?
Anybody get into it, because it just fascinates me. If I go and get a tattoo, it's there for life. So you just want to make sure that person is skilled at what has the history.
Well, look, it's an extremely tough industry to get into because you firstly you're dealing with people's skin. You have that huge responsibility unto yourself as well as the client, mostly the client. Um, so you would need to go about it by firstly learning how to draw. You got to know the absolute basics of how to actually master your pencil, a pen, or anything of that matter. Um, and then secondly, actually learning the various aspects within the actual tattoo industry, from clientele to the type of machines, the inks, the needles, what you can do, what you can't do, uh, depth of the actual needle, skin types. What else? There's just so many. I mean, to start with, you'd actually get into an apprenticeship, which in my particular case, I went through some sort of a apprenticeship, but I can't really call it that because it was pretty much um, delving into this by myself, purely because at the time no one was interested in actually taking upon an apprenticeship because it's so difficult. You can't willy nilly obviously just tattoo anyone. Um, you have to take the time out, and it takes literally 2 years or so to actually even touch someone because there's so many things that you actually need to know. And that takes time. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can simply just go and have a course done. um, the apprenticeship enables you to actually study the craft day in and day out, the do's and don'ts and all of that type of thing. I never had the chance to do that. In the beginning, I essentially went onto YouTube and looked at every conceivable video that I could actually think of. Anything related to tattooing, read it up, studied it, and it took roughly about a year for me to actually get that focus where I could actually have that, how would you say it, the confidence to actually get onto someone's skin and actually do proper work. But that was all thanks to friends, family that actually said, listen, you're good enough, you can draw, let's just give it a whirl. And so it started with a bit of a home studio, but that was a big no-no, obviously, because you can't, in this day and age, tattoo out of your home. It's illegal. So I've managed to get into a shop, which was great. I was headhunted, and a good, famous, a well-known artist here in the Helderberg, he approached me, and he just said, you're doing great stuff. I've seen your work on people, and I'd like you to join. So I ended up joining and working with him for about a year and a half. That I can call it was my official apprenticeship, which I'm actually very grateful for because I learned a hell of a lot.
Is there any sort of body or anybody who checks to make sure that your environment is clean, that it's safe, it's hygienic, and all that people can have confidence when they're going into a tattoo shop?
It's funny you ask that because the straight answer is no, unfortunately, because we don't have a governing body, and it's something that, well, we don't have a tattoo association, basically. So anything close to that, remotely close to that, would probably fall under the cosmetic industry. But to answer your question, it doesn't. We're still lost in that. South Africa still isn't governed. So it is a free market. It's like a wild west here. So finding the right artist, the right type of shop, having the various OSHA protocols in place, and having a decent studio that's clean and presentable, and something that's almost touching on, how would you say, theatre, basically, in a hospital. It's almost got to be to that extent where it has to be brutally clean and safe, actually, because that's the number one. It's precaution, it's prevention is better than cure, that type of thing. So it's having that sort of mindset, and that's what your shop needs to end up being, the studio that is. So obviously people can't be doing it in their houses. But to answer your question, yeah, the industry isn't governed, unfortunately. It's just literally taking face value. If you're interested in getting a tattoo or have any interest in getting any work done, you have to go to the shop physically, the studio, speak to the artists, check out their portfolios, and just try and get a sense of who they are, how they work. You can see a mile away if it's clean and I would just say presentable, and if they've got good work ethics.
Basic questions somebody could ask, when you're going into that shop, like the type of equipment they're using or the inks, or is there anything that just to give you that confidence that just in a quick, simple way, just go in and say, you can look around, and I could look, and I've been getting a tattoo on myself and I think that looks clean, but is there any sort of thing to give the people confidence that they could ask that you could recommend?
I think if I can recommend anything, I think just to ask questions. You've literally got the opportunity you're diving into something that's quite physical, number one, and spiritual, secondly, because it's something that it's a piece of artwork that you're going to actually eventually get for the rest of your life. So first things first, you're going to be able to have the confidence to question your artists in any manner whatsoever, what type of inks they're using, how about are they going to do it. But if it's a decent artist, and I think a person at the end of the day that has the respect and responsibility that they have. So to give you an example, once I do it, a person will come for a consultation. I would make sure that we physically meet, we get to chat, and it's in the nice space that they can see exactly where they're going to be tattooed. There's a couple of things that we talk about. Firstly, which is the actual design, who you are as a person, all the little details from birth to fathers, brothers, sisters, just getting to know the person, getting to know the feel, that type of thing, because that's when you can delve into, once the actual overall theme is sort of understood or conceptualized, then you can go into certain details like size, the placement, and even before that, placement justifies the size, because you don't want to actually make your tattoo or get the tattoo design to actually look bad in a way. If it's going to be something, you got to think of composition, that type of thing. So if it's going to go on a ball of the shoulder, you don't want it overlapping in a certain way. Or if it's intentionally done, then so be it. But it's all little factors like that. We talk about, very, very importantly, there's two others that I haven't mentioned, which is the medical situation. Do you have dermatitis? When last have you gone for an operation? Do you have scar tissue on the placement that you're thinking of getting the tattoo? Have you got any prior ailments? Have you got anything like that? Because remember, we're dealing with bloodborne pathogens, or blood at least, and by piercing the skin, you're literally creating an opportunity for infection of something else that could be lying within the actual body. So that's what we talk about, even to the extent of actually talking to the doctor. So it's very, very good to understand and know your client in that way as well. And then lastly, we would talk about aftercare. Aftercare is very, very important, because a lot of people forget that, it's just like any other procedure done. If you go to the doc, if you go for a surgical operation or something like that, the doctor does great work. You get back home, you don't follow the right aftercare, what's going to happen? So it's changing and educating the clients and the mindset. There's a very big difference with, a lot of people come in and they just think getting a tattoo is just a pretty picture. It's actually not. There's so much more into that, because it really does affect you physically, number one, and obviously psychologically and spiritually, pretty much. Yeah.
Talking on that's the spiritual side of it, and the what you do. I've thought often. I thought, gee, if I got a tattoo, and I've thought about, gee, it'd be quite nice, but I never know what um, what I do, because it's there for so long. It's there for your whole life, especially if you're young. I see a lot of young people, very young, go in and they get a tattoo, and you wonder, why would they do that? It's going to be with you until you're 80, 90 or whatever. What would you
That's it.
advise people to think about before going, and even before discussing it with you, what they would want on their skin, painting on their skin?
Um, that's a good question. I think first and foremost, just dig deep down as to what type of person you are. I mean, everyone's different in their own way. You're your own little cliched, a special snowflake type of thing. You got to think of where you've come from in the life, how you've grown up. What is it? What is this physical, visual marking going to be? This permanent marking going to represent? Is it going to be you and your life, the way you've grown up? Is it going to be sort of a memorial? Is it going to be something like that? So it's just having an inkling of an idea, and then literally when we have the consultation, you can, or when you actually end up having to meet your artist, you just go through all those little aspects, and so that wonderful idea sort of spawns and creates other ideas. That everything can be broken up into visual elements. It doesn't matter what you think of. If you can think of any keywords, that's pretty much how symbols have evolved, or that's what symbols are. It's a representation, it's a meaning of something in very, very particular. For example, like the dot. The simplest form is the dot, and that can be understood as the sun, seeds, it's so-called life, pollen, that type of thing. And then the dot in a more 3D aspect is a sphere that's more sort of worldly. There's so many different meanings in every single thing. So it's literally it's not being in the sense of overthinking. It's just simplifying yourself, your thoughts, who you are as a person, that type of thing, and then you can literally create something visual from it that you're going to appreciate.
Hey, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to just actually, I've got some of your images or tattoos that we picked out here, and that we're just going to ask you about, and if you could tell us a little bit about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen now, and here we go. It's got quite an interesting design element about it, which I almost graphic. Is that quite common in your style?
It's funny you mentioned style, because actually this is actually my style. It's funny you clicked on this actually first, because this is the actual style that I've pretty much come to create, or love and create out of my own. I only say that because there's nothing else like it. And every artist has a particular style or certain way of tattooing, whether they actually end up doing portraits or graphic or something like that. But in this particular case, this is something that's made simply from shapes. And when I say shapes, as far as I'm concerned, is almost one of the most vital and fundamental and important aspects of symbols, art, and visual elements that us humans actually end up working with. Because if you take a look in this tattoo, for example, there are a lot of rectangles, circles, triangles, squares. Those type of shapes involve making up a whole bigger picture. And it's actually funny, this was one of the first tattoos that I actually ended up doing, which is a friend of mine, just an amazing guy, who actually he's like one of the first people to say, right, here's the canvas, go for it, do what you want to do. And the first thing that I actually thought of wanting to do was my own style. It was wanting to get that out as quick as possible. And we came up with something like this, which was essentially, if you can see in the top side, there's almost like a face. It's got the two eyes set with the nose.
Yeah.
There's a trident involved. There's an arrow that leads down, which is his pointing arrow. It's his directional line with an arrow. It's him being essentially a warrior in today's age, and is pretty much his star sign as well.
Looking at that, I mean, it's graphic. Now, if you're doing something graphic on a flat surface, it's quite easy because, you know, a square stays square, a triangle, a line stays true. But now suddenly you're working in 3D. You're actually literally having to draw around. So how does that affect your design?
In this particular case, the design itself is actually simple on paper, obviously, but the minute it goes around body, because you're dealing with contours, so that flat piece of paper and square, just like you said, starts changing and morphing. I mean, I couldn't explain to you how many times we used a stencil, or I created the stencil initially, and put it to this guy's body. It was crazy. It ended up being a day long. It's funny. He actually went home. He was pretty bummed out about it. And I said to him, "We're gonna nail it. We'll get it right." Because every time we kept putting it on and placing it, it was literally half of it was perfect and right, while the other half was totally skew. And fortunately, the following day, he said, "Right, we're going to do this at one go." And we literally took one go, and it was done. So that was it. I said, right, 5 minutes, toilet break, ciggy break, and we started. It was great. But I learned a lot from this tattoo. This was deep and heavy, but obviously tribals are a little bit deep and heavy, but yeah, I definitely learned a lesson. It was a great opportunity. And he still came back today. I still see him often, and we finish it up. We topped it up, touched it up, and he's very, very happy with it. I'm very happy with it. So yeah, something very nice and very small.
Too, and yeah, superb work, and a lot of trust in him to go in 80 days. So we move on to the next one. Now, this is a far more stylized pieces. I mean, the shading and the detail here is absolutely incredible, and it's amazing that you can get such detail on skin.
The client was a Swedish gentleman. He came for a holiday, and he had about 2 weeks left of his holiday, and he managed to check out the portfolio and just obviously trust me with the actual tattoo. But that worked out awesome. I mean, that consultation from start to finish, he was so particular about everything that he wanted. So all the elements that you see there was very, very specific. But he gave me, I could play around with the actual style of it. But those flowers that you see, those are the birth flowers of his daughter. Essentially, the whole tattoo it's a dedication to his daughter, his newborn baby. And obviously, being the placement closer to his heart, that was very important for him. He was covered, I would say, at least 25 to 30% of his body, so he knew what was coming as far as pain is concerned, that type of thing. But yeah, that tattoo was great. It's got the two birth flowers. Everyone, if people don't know that, if you're looking for a birth flower, people have, depending on what month you're born in, you've got certain birth flowers. So that was hers. And then the clock, that was for time.
This is an incredible tattoo. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful.
This particular one was he's a gentleman by the name of Hendrik. He's an actual South African pilot. And he just, it's funny, the consultation was obviously not what he expected at all. He came in with a simple request of fixing his tattoo that was on the inside of his bicep, on the same arm. And he wanted this whole elaborate sort of star sign thing, that because this is how he felt connected. Also, that was sort of meant, how would you say, that this explained him. So I said, you know what, can we actually sort of turn this and make it an opportunity? How big are you willing to go? And he said, well, just do your thing. Let's chat. And literally within a half an hour, I managed to sketch up something, and it was something very similar to this, because it was all the aspects and elements or attributes that you see within the tattoo. For example, him being a pilot. So you've got if we can start from the bottom side, he has his wings. So that's where you would have, that's pretty much his flight wings. You've got a topical, how would you say it? It's a topical graph map. Just above it, then you've got the world, obviously, but then you've got the southern tip of Africa that's sticking out, a bit of an old school feel. You've got the compass, which is actually the turbine engine, sort of an old school engine that he ended up loving, with the propeller, and the propeller having in the bottom left hand side, it's a little bit unlegible, but it's a ambigram, which is his two daughters' names. You can pretty much read it in a mirror, upside down, back to front, that type of thing. And then within the actual engine, you've got the two kids, the birth dates, and his wife's birth dates in Roman numerals. And the top, we look at the geese. Those two geese is a representation of him and his wife. Those two geese are, I forget the name, but it's the bird that flies the highest, essentially. And they're partners for life. And then the silhouette of the actual 737 that he actually flies up in the clouds. So with the little triangular pieces running down at the bottom, that's essentially vibration of him and his life and the whole sort of spiritual aspect of it. So, and then obviously lastly was just trying to do some sort of an eyeball, which I ended up touching up and fixing up, but that's the main center part there that you see that's in blue.
That's if I think about it, and just listening to this, and you know, one needs to really put a lot of time and as I flick onto the next one, and effort into this. And you know, people think, oh, I'm going to spend a day, or like you mentioned earlier, the guy to come back for a second day. You know, if you're spending this with the rest of your life, what's 2 days or 3 days, or you know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's really, I think what it comes down to, tattooing is essentially it's a spiritual, physical connection that you have with yourself. Because from the early days, you by going through all the pain and everything else to create something that's almost tangible, that's visually appealing to not only other people but yourself, and how you relate that and transfer that through your whole life. It's a big thing. I mean, it's some of them are very small, some of them are very large, as you can see. But I mean, like for this guy, this particular piece, this was a memorial, custom memento memorial piece for him and his father. They used to watch films like Bloodsport. And it was a particular scene within the movie, the characters doing a Denmark, a death touch, and how they just connected. It was something visual that actually represented him and his father literally connecting at that very time. And that was the actual sort of proudest, awesome moment that he had within his life, just before. Obviously, his dad passing away with cancer a couple of years back. So, yeah, I mean, it may look silly to people, but I mean, for the actual person that's carrying it, it's amazing. When you actually hear the stories behind it, that's what makes me want to do what I do every day. It's become such a passion. It's ridiculous.
A lot of your work is a lot of black and white tones. Is that sort of particular in your style, or just
black and white? It's a tricky. For now, I really do enjoy black and white, black and grey. That's what we call it. and utilizing different techniques with on the skin. But color is a wonderful thing if you can work with it. I haven't got that much experience working with color, even though I have done loads of color pieces, but it's not as popular as black and white, because essentially black and gray is it's pretty much, it's that modern overall look that's going to last, that has that longevity for years to come, as opposed to a color piece. Remember, you're dealing with skin, so the thing with skin is you're forever what's the word? You're forever shedding your skin. I mean, on the hands and feet, you exfoliate basically 10 times faster than your whole body. So your body and your skin's trying to get rid of this. So the ink that's under your epidermis, it's literally it's something that it needs to get rid of. So as the years progressively go by, your tattoo fades, and black is literally the color that's going to outlast and outshine the rest of the colors. So to answer your question, I'd love to do more color pieces, but black and gray is pretty much the way to go. That's what I'm thoroughly enjoying it, because you can pull out the tones, you can still use tonal value and hues and everything within that. If you're doing a color piece, yeah, you're going to be going for a lot of top ups, depending on if it's done really well. But I got a lot to go still.
Where you've brought in a bit of color, so we've got the red and other things, and you also, again, huge amounts of detail in here. Just a quick question. There's two things that I want to know. First of all, is it something like this? How painful is it?
Pain wise, it depends on it depends on you, Mel. It really, if I can give you sort of an inkling, take pinch yourself using only but your nails. Pick a place or whatever the case, and get the tiniest piece of skin and pinch yourself to the point where you actually are pretty much irritated, if not sore, and just that's what it feels like over and over, and thereafter it actually turns out to be like a bad sunburn. So that's when you're pretty much done. So to some people it's a fantastic feeling. I mean, one of my partners here at the studio, she's crazy into ink, and she absolutely loves that feeling. But it's depends on what floats your boat.
Look back to this one just as the last one as we go through the thing. I mean, the motorbike, maybe that's what I do one day, because I used to have a Harley, and I can't wait to get another one again. I mean, awesome color and everything you got in here. So maybe it'll be something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful work, and I really admire you for what you're doing. And I think just getting towards the end now, and I'm just going to stop the share. We're in a flipping awkward time now, and around the world, the whole pandemic and everything that's going on. How have you managed to cope? Because you obviously can't. Social distancing is definitely not something that's going to help tattoo artists. How are you managing to cope with this?
It's been tough. I'm not gonna lie, but I've run an initiative by providing an opportunity to get vouchers basically discounted. So it's currently I've got a 50% discount voucher that if you purchase between now, well, it's been for the last couple of weeks until the end of lockdown, you get your tattooed essentially for free. Well, not for free, but 50%. It's a hell of a discount, and I don't think it'll really happen again. Obviously, in dire straits, I'll definitely do it. But there's been phenomenal support. I'm so grateful for the people that have actually supported me through this, because it has shown, and it's been going very, very well. So as far as handling it financially, this is how it's pretty much been. I'm not busy with any other design commissions or art commissions or anything like that, even though I should actually get get involved and get busy with it, like you were talking about with your other videos, and collaborating with other artists and that. And it's definitely something to consider, especially at these trying times. It is tough, but it's going well. Just cabin fever starting to settle in a little bit, but just keeping busy, sketching, keeping focused, and yeah, I just can't wait to get back on track.
Well, listen, I really thank you for sharing your work and chatting to us about tattoos, and something I'll definitely look. If I'm going to get a tattoo done, you know where I'm going. Um,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
will be there. And I'd just like to say out to all of you who are listening to this and doing it, if you'd like to ask Dave any questions, I won't be able to answer too much on tattooing and that, because I know nothing about it. But Dave, I'm sure, would be able to be prepared to give up a bit of time to answer any questions you have. And if you'd like to get hold of Dave, you can just send me a message, or I'll put up Dave's contacts on this video. If you feel you want to get a tattoo done and take it up on that offer of his, and get a tattoo done. And I can guarantee you, if you get a tattoo done by Dave, you will walk away happy. I've seen his work, and he is an amazing artist. So Dave, thanks very much.
Mal, thank you very much for the opportunity.